Don't you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love? Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
And we're cutting it. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit, right here. Get your merch, folks. Get your merch. Those hoodies, it's going to be fall soon. Those hoodies are super, super comfortable. Normally I come on with the, the three-piece and everything, but I figured, rock the merch for once, right? Or a little bit more. Not for once, but a little bit more. All right, follow me on Truth and Getter. You know where to find me, at People's Pundit on Truth and Getter, at People's_Pundit on Twitter. And, of course, you can follow our channels on YouTube and Rumble. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. On Getter, of course, you just keep giving us those pluses. And while you're there, you can see real easily the best place to follow us, which is peoplespundit.locals.com. All right. Congratulations to Dave on his exclusive offer, Viva, to join Rumble. Woo woo, good for him. No, good for him, man. Power to the man. He's if you guys don't know Viva Fry partners with my buddy Robert Barnes. Obviously, I'm sure most people know, but if you don't, check it out. It's really cool. Good for him. I'm happy for him and his success. I really am. I really give him he works his butt off and he deserves it. All right. A couple things I want to go over today. We did put up some new numbers from Pennsylvania on CD Media, cdm.press on the front page right now. You'll see the generic ballot, which we're going to go over here in a second. I haven't had a chance to comment on Inside the Numbers about Pennsylvania. There are a couple of things I want to say. I was on a lot of other shows to talk about it, but I want to talk a little bit about it here. And then the rest, of course, you can always find on Creative Destruction, cdm.press, shortcut URL. Bring it right there. The CD Media Big Data Poll. All right, looks like we're going into Wisconsin next. And I also want to go over the locals. Bear with me on this. If you saw it, maybe some others did not. But it was my response to the narrative that Republicans could be, quote, either losing steam or that Donald Trump is, holding them back. And then there was, if you saw it on Business Insider, and this is me on Real Clear Politics, a link to it right there. We'll go over it. But then you saw this on Business Insider, people basically saying, they're taking a risk. Trump is going to run around the country and rally for all these Republican candidates, and they're going to take the risk of doing so to galvanize the base without turning off independence. We're going to go over my article briefly. I'm going to show you. So look, I don't speculate when I write these articles. If I do it, I take the time to back it up by numbers and data. That's what People's Pundit Daily was all about before Google decided that I was like too much information that they didn't want people to hear and sent a digital nuke my way. All right. So we had to evolve into something else. But I will show you what the polling data shows on that. Is that really true? Is that even really true? How is Trump doing with these supposedly independent voters that he could turn off? How is he doing with them right now? All right, so we're going to go over that and see if any of that really makes any damn sense whatsoever. And then, of course, I know you've been waiting for Newsom versus Trump. I told you, don't get your hopes up. Harris versus Trump is more interesting, frankly. Biden versus Trump is the closest. I'm just blowing it out there right now. You guys know that. With all the time that we've been doing the public polling project. The truth of the matter is the Democratic bench is very weak. And Gavin Newsom, while us politicos know who he is, a lot of the country doesn't. Maybe they just know him as that liberal governor from California. He turns a lot of people off. Frankly, we were better off trying to pull Michelle damn Obama, I think. I'm serious. And maybe that's where we should go next time. And just so you know, here's the mainland participation from the public polling project. Clearly, you can see that California makes up its lion's share of voters in the Western region where we polled. Of course, you did have some even out there all the way in Hawaii. I wonder which response they picked. Keep that in mind. Oh boy. Keep that in mind when you look at Gavin Newsom's support, even with leaners. You got to expect that a lot of it came from there, and I'm going to show you it, in fact, did. But in the rest of the country, how do they feel about Gavin Newsom? Well, we're just going to have to go ahead and discuss that. Because these polls, folks, that show these people nobody really knows doing so well, it's just not reality. They do these tightened voter screens, and when they do that, they're basically polling only high interest voters, and that's just about it. Yeah, so we're going to go over that, and we will. All right, so let me get my act together here. I was changing up which one I wanted to go to first. Let's start with PA, okay? Let's do that. Bam. Bam. Actually, let me make this. I know we're going to have to figure out, Laura, when we... yeah, man, I'll tell you what. It's all, I love them. And, and it would take a lot for me to move away from them. But for the love of God, this is very, very small. I know most of you saw this already, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I do just want to say Biden's approval rating is a little bit misleading here. We have him at 43.3% versus, about 55% who disapprove. All right. Look, and it is 55% if you round. The strongly versus, the intensity index, strongly approve versus strongly disapprove, is -30. There were very few. The percentage was small of people who said, I somewhat disapprove of the job Joe Biden's doing. The spread between somewhat approve and somewhat disapprove was about 19 points in the direction of somewhat approve. Is plus 19, but in disapproval, the intensity index was -30. 51% of the voters in the state of Pennsylvania disapprove of the job Joe Biden's doing. And I want to just answer some of the stupid little criticism I saw on Twitter. This is a likely voter model. All right. First of all, Pennsylvania is not D plus 8 or 9 anymore. Those days are long over. Do me a favor and go look and see what the partisan composition of the electorate was in 2020. Republicans outvoted Democrats in the special election. They voted in droves in the primary. There aren't that many independents in the state, and many of them that you call and speak with that say they're independents are in fact not independents. They are in fact registered Democrats who just never changed their registration. Republicans have been gaining in this state since the era of Trump. They would not have gained if Mitt Romney was the standard bearer of the party still. It would still be a state that, a Democratic presidential candidate could carry between 4 and 6, maybe even 8 points pretty easily. But it's not that anymore. So yes, Republicans still lag in registration by just under 6 points. It's really not true. It's just not. So don't be surprised if the electorate is like R1 to R3. Yeah, don't be shocked if that happens. All right, so let's, with that in mind, education obviously jumped out at me in the state of Pennsylvania, always does. 2 things jumped out at me. 1, or 3. 1, the negatives for Joe Biden, the intensity index. 2, that in the presidential election, we have never polled the state of Pennsylvania. And I went back and looked. The biggest lead for Hillary Clinton was about 3 points in 2016. We never polled the state of Pennsylvania and had a poll that was out. One of the contenders was outside the sampling error. What does that mean? This is plus or minus 3.1. So ballpark, 3 points or below a lead like that, it means it's anybody's race. When it's outside the sampling error, above 3, we went back and looked. We never polled the state of Pennsylvania at the presidential level and found somebody leading outside of the sampling error. In fact, here, that is the case. So that jumped right out at me. And then number 3 was basically the education factor. which in Pennsylvania matters. And some wise guy, of course, is like, well, okay, so I see, I clearly see what's going on here. The stupider you are, the more likely you are to vote Republican. Yeah, that's not a smart thing to say if you're trying to win over those voters. Another way to look at it, if you're looking at it from their perspective, is the more indoctrinated you are, the more likely you are to vote for Democratic voters. So try one, I challenge people to try to pop their own bubble and try to see the world through someone else's eyes. I hate that crap. I really do. Anyway, with leaners, Trump leads 46.6 to 40. Folks, in 2020, Pennsylvania was a close state. You saw, Trump +1 to Biden +2. We never had this race, anyone's blowout race, the way that this is. This is not a close election. You can look at Doug Mastriano's margin in Allegheny, and you can look and compare it to Trump's margin in Allegheny. Trump is simply doing better than he did in the past, and also better than other Republicans are doing in these areas. I mean, he's damn near tied with Joe Biden in Allegheny. Would Joe Biden carry Allegheny with the rest of, the percentage that's undecided? Yes, absolutely. But Donald Trump did very well against Hillary Clinton in Allegheny in 2016, got roughly about 40% of the vote or so, and then fell slightly in 2020 to the high 30s, which was a big deal. This is Pittsburgh and the suburbs. You have a lot of steel workers out there. You have a serious number of working class. That's where Trump base came from. But what we're seeing is an erosion for Joe Biden among some of these working voters that said, okay, because I'm sick of the boat rocking every day. Remember the seasick voter? I'm going to give Joe Biden a chance. Just for people who haven't been following us that long. It's an analogy I use that basically tried to tell Trump, that not everybody does like the boat rocking every day. And whether or not you're rocking the boat, which he was not, they were rocking the boat on purpose. They wanted the boat to rock so people would get seasick. And I told Donald Trump, instead of, saying, suck it up, Buttercup, he should have been holding some of their heads while they vomited off the side of the damn boat. It was my little attempt to make an analogy he'd understand. But now we are where we are. Cost of living, energy, whack the state. Donald Trump has so many I told you so's for the voters of Pennsylvania. They know it and they're listening. All right. So you also see Biden doing still pretty decently in some of the other Western states that are being stubbornly Democratic. Erie County, for instance, so that helps him in the West. But Trump is basically in the mid-40s in Allegheny. You can look and see that is not the case for others. Doug Mastriano is at 31.5. So it's very real, is what I'm trying to show you. In central Pennsylvania, Doug Mastriano's at 63. Donald Trump is at 66. Shapiro's at 33. Joe Biden's at 27. All right. The Northeast, which is part of the most Trumpiest areas of Pennsylvania. What do I mean by that? That's the Obama-Trump voter. They voted for Obama twice. They voted for Donald Trump in 2016. Some of them may have shifted back to Biden, if you buy that argument, Others would say, no, they didn't because Trump got more votes. They just, and I'm not going to go into that right now. I'm simply saying, let's just take their little, now it was a close race in 2020. As somebody who polled it, I can tell you it still was. No matter how much better Donald Trump was doing to pull out additional voters, which no president has ever done and lost, but I digress. No matter how much he has ever done to do that, it still was a very, very close race. And this is not. This is not a close race. The state of Pennsylvania would be called pretty quickly. Yes, we'd have to worry about all these late arriving ballots, but the margin would be so big, I think probably by, 12:30 at night, midnight, people would start to say, all right, there's just not enough votes for Joe Biden remaining. The Northeast, Lackawanna, Scranton, Bidentown, right? Mastriano's pulling about 43%. He's doing pretty damn good about, he's basically tied with Josh Shapiro. He leads him a little bit. That's pretty damn good. It means that some of those Trump voters are still voting Republican, but Trump is getting 50. And Joe Biden is down to 35. With 13% undecided, but we're going to look at those undecided soon and explain to you why I'm very, very bullish on Doug Mastriano. The Dutch, they're about even. which is a little bit weird. What happened there? Probably Berks. We separate the Dutch from the Southeast because we don't want Montgomery and Delaware to be overrepresenting that entire Southeast region that you see exit polls and other pollsters do. We separate the Dutch because we know what, Lancaster and York, and we know what percentage they are relative to the Southeast overall. And we make sure that there's enough of them to be representative. Otherwise, you're going to overestimate the Democratic margin, which is what everybody did in 2020, who got the Biden plus nines. I'm looking at you, New York Times, Morning Consults, YouGovs. Should I keep going? Franklin and Marshall. We know who you are. Reuters, Ipsos. Anyway, in the Southeast, you can actually see, very typical Democratic margin there, or typical now, 53 to 37. Shapiro leads Mastriano, but Biden barely leads Trump there now. Trump's at 40, which tells me Bucks is going to Donald Trump this time. Chester is going to be closer. Mitt Romney carried it, but it swung hard away from Republicans in the era of Trump. It would be closer. Berks would be closer. Okay? And then in Philadelphia, Trump and Mastriano are both in, Mastriano is actually doing better than Trump in Philadelphia, which is interesting, 25 to 23. And Fetterman has some significant problems in some African-American precincts in the state of in the county of Philadelphia. It's the only place he got crushed there, and it wasn't even by Connor Lamb, somebody else, but African-American voters aren't that warmed up to John Fetterman. They don't really like him. I don't know if it's some of the stories about chasing black guys down the street with guns or something. I don't know. Or one person said, did you know he used to trash Obama? We got that in an interview, which I did not know. I'm not even sure that that's 100% true, but that voter said it was. He believes it. And he's like, no, I'm not going to vote for John Fetterman. I'll either vote for somebody else or I'll vote third party. But this is a Democrat. He probably, or he won't vote at all. I mean, third party or not vote at all. That guy, he's a likely voter, a very typical midterm voter. What's he going to do? I don't know. He doesn't like John Fetterman. We'll see. All right. So overall, this is not a close race. Look by education, and you'll see why. Look at the negatives with Joe Biden among people who have a high school diploma or less. The working class, 59% strongly disapprove. He's in the low 60s altogether. Some college associate degree also in the low 60s altogether. 4-year degrees now, just barely underwater, but nevertheless, he's still underwater, 46-53. All right. And now advanced degrees, they still love him. He's at 70% approval, about 29% disapproval. That's it. So it's really that post-grad advanced degree. The problem for Joe Biden is or Democrats overall in these races is that they are the least to be undecided. In the presidential election, you do have working class about a point less undecided, but that's because they're already going very hard for Donald Trump. Some college associate, 11% undecided, and the 4-year degree, 12% undecided. So even if we were to assume Joe Biden gets, let's say, 2-1 of these, it wouldn't matter because Trump's going to at least get 2-1 of the some, which is a bigger group, by the way. This is not a close race. I'm going to keep repeating this over and over again. This is starting to look like Ohio in 2020, right, Laura? This is starting to look like Ohio to me in 2020. And I don't mean it's going to be 8 points. I'm just the polling is suggesting that even if Joe Biden was to close that gap with the voters that are undecided, it's still a pretty comfortable win for Donald Trump. All right. And the sampling error, again, 3 points. So what does that mean? It means Biden really can't get any closer than 4 points in our poll. He'd be hoping for a 4-point loss. That's crazy to me that's rolling off my lips. But in 2020, it was crazy that I thought Donald Trump was going to get in the 40s in Miami-Dade, and he in fact did he got 46%. So I've learned to trust myself when I see these alignments, at least myself. All right, so you can see here, obviously, huge margins for Trump among the working class, but advanced degrees are still breaking for Biden, 65-24. We see this at a greater degree in the governor's race in the Senate race to a lesser degree because there still are there are a lot more viable candidates. Whereas some look, whoever wins these races is going to win with like 47, 48% of the vote. Pennsylvania has a long history of giving third-party voters, third-party candidates, a not significant as in like 10%, but significant as in 2 points here, 3 points there, a point here. You add it all up, and a two-party candidate is going to win a race with 47, 48% of the vote. That's it. Okay? Doug Mastriano's carrying the working class 52-34. Some associate he's carrying 49-36. He's losing four-year degrees 52-36, and then, of course, the post-grad. But why am I bullish on Doug Mastriano's chances? Look who's still undecided. Among those who are undecided, 62% strongly disapprove of the job Joe Biden is doing as president. Another few points somewhat disapprove, bringing it almost to 2/3 of the undecided being negative on Joe Biden. And the vast majority of that being strongly negative. Then when we look at that and compare it to education, the working class is the most undecided. Some college associate, which is another group good for Republicans, 10% undecided. The four-year degree, which is good for Democrats, is not great, but good, which is 8% undecided. And then post-grads who are only 5% undecided. Considering the first two categories are the most undecided and the largest percentages of the electorate in the state of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro would need these people to straight up not vote to stop Doug Mastriano from overcoming him. And what about this other poll, Rich? What about the Fox poll? I don't give a damn what the Fox poll says. I don't care. I'm telling you what I found. All right. And the same is true with Oz. Only you can see they're drawing vote. Ronald Johnson, 2.6% in the Constitution Party. Eric Chase Gerhardt, 2% in the Libertarian Party. The Keystone State of Pennsylvania candidate, 1%. The two independents, which are pushing, 0.6 of a point combined, and the Green pushing 0.3 of a point. By the way, the Keystone State of Pennsylvania in the governor's race is pulling a point, and the Libertarian Matt Hackenberg is pulling 2.3, which is why right now you see both parties desperately trying to remove these candidates from the ballot. And I actually would make the argument that this is hurting Republicans this time more than it's hurting the Democratic candidates. Because if you look at those third-party voters, they are going for both Oz and Mastriano and Trump, actually, all three. They're just not, some of them are going for these independents and these libertarians and the Keystone State Party. You really only have two candidates, one in one race, two in another, that could be considered left-wing options, alternatives. The rest, could be drawing from the Democratic candidates. This we just released. The generic ballot is 49.6% for Republicans, 43.8% for Democrats. So what does that tell me? They want to vote Republican. Trump is real close to that number, a generic number. They want to, and by the way, he'd hit it. When there's more undecideds in the presidential election than there are the generic ballot. When those people decided, Trump would probably pull right there. 49.5 is probably where he'd be. A two-party candidate's going to get, a few points, and Joe Biden's going to get like 45. And Trump's going to win by, like 4 points. That's where it would be. They want to vote Republican. They're just not totally sold on it at this point. And they've been outspent. Democrats have outspent Republicans considerably in this state. So when we start to see Republicans spend and get closer to parity, let's see what happens. Let's see if those converge a little bit. All right. Most important issues, it's in alphabetical order. Don't flip out for Republicans watching. Abortion has risen to 13%. It has in the state of Pennsylvania, but it's coming from people who are Democratic voters and Democratic-leaning voters. There is no interest among Republicans in abortion. And you can see that when you look at, who's winning what issues, which we're going to look at in a second. It's just not there. It's just more interest among Democratic-leaning voters in abortion. All right. Cost of living is number one with 24%. The economy and jobs is number two with 14.4, which is about a point over abortion. And number four is actually gun issues, which was interesting to me. And the next one, by the way, is immigration. And the next one after that is election integrity. There's some concern about Supreme Court appointments, state Supreme Court appointments for the governors, stuff like that. Public education, critical race theory. There's a bunch of others. There was about 8. We can take a look at that if you want. But interestingly enough, let's take a look at, and here I'm going to have to remove my face in order to do this. All right, let's look at how they're voting. And after this, we'll go to the most important. Let's go by most important issues. And let's go to Trump v. Biden with leaners. And you'll see this across the board. The abortion voter is going for the Democrats like 9 out of 10. It's incredible. But cost of living is overwhelmingly 30-something points in favor of Joe Biden. Crime voters are going overwhelmingly in favor of Donald Trump. And cost of living, was going against Joe Biden. The economy and jobs, look at that margin, 63% to 24%. That's incredible. Election integrity is actually Biden's suit. And because it's also reforms. So if you're a Democrat, you're picking election reforms. You're thinking of it like that. That's why I tell you to try to pop your own bubble and see things from another perspective. Pollsters are guilty of this all the freaking time. They word things like the leftists they are. Immigration is a Trump issue, 100%. Foreign policy, national security. Now they're back to Trump on that. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? And gun rights, which scored pretty damn high, is an 80% Trump winner. But yeah, on foreign policy, by the way, go back and look at the polling from 2020. Remember how it was actually pretty even in the Rust Belt outside of Iowa and Ohio. In Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Minnesota, there was a lot of, I would call it, confusion. People believed the media narrative that Joe Biden would be a stabilizing force. They believed that. You can see Doug absolutely killing Shapiro on COVID, which is why he's doing a fantastic job, as is Ron DeSantis, of not letting people forget about COVID. If you have the record to be able to do it, if you have the public statements that allow you to do it, leaving this issue on the table is foolish. Nothing turned off suburban women more. Nothing. Than watching their children miss school. For the labor union's benefit. Mastriano is killing Shapiro on cost of living inflation, 52 to 30. Crime, he's got an 11-point lead on. The economy, look at that, 53 to 26. Election integrity, he's getting killed to almost 2 to 1. Environment, climate change, stuff like that. Even on foreign policy and national security, safety issues, Doug Mastriano has a lead. Gun rights, he has a lead. Healthcare is Shapiro's issue. Immigration is overwhelmingly Mastriano's issue. All right? This is really, interesting stuff. Look at the Senate. It's a little less obvious for some of these, but coronavirus, Oz has a lead. Republicans are actually leading on the issue of COVID now. Don't leave it on the table if you're a Republican. Otherwise, I got to tell you, it's campaign malpractice. Cost of living, Oz. Crime and safety, Oz. Economy and jobs, Oz. Election integrity, election reforms, Fetterman. Environment, climate change, of course, Fetterman. This really isn't that much. It is in the Senate. That goes to Oz. Senators deal with foreign policy issues. Gun rights goes to Oz. Healthcare goes to Fetterman, which is, I'm not going to say it. I'll leave it alone. Immigration goes to Oz. The combined other goes to Democrats in all 3 cases, by the way. All right. So, it's a little bit of a no-brainer here, folks. On the generic ballot, abortion overwhelmingly is done because Republicans just don't care. They just don't care. That's the truth of it. And neither do independents. Otherwise, you would have seen at least some independents pick the Republicans' point of view. They're not interested in it, folks. They're not. Coronavirus mandates goes to the Democratic candidate, even though the Republicans were winning it statewide. Make sense to you? Because they're leaving it on the table. That's why. Cost of living, overwhelmingly Republican. Crime and policing and safety, overwhelmingly Republican. The economy and jobs, overwhelmingly Republican. Again, election reform is a good issue for Democrats. It tells you people are seeing it more from reforms. Those who pick it, anyway, are seeing it from a more reforms point of view than an integrity. If Republican-leaning voters weren't so concerned about the economy and inflation, Democrats aren't really picking that because they don't want to admit it, guys, Be honest here. Foreign policy, national security, Republicans, over 10 points. Gun rights, Second Amendment issues, Republicans. Healthcare is Democratic issue. Immigration, border security, Republicans. I mean, I'm going to leave it there, for right now, and we'll be back to it in a hot minute here. But I think you guys see my point. A lot of this is, we'll see what their new contract with America looks like. What I saw on that website did not look all that inspiring. We'll talk about it more in a little bit, but we'll see. I'll reserve hardcore judgment until I see the entire platform. It's just that something popped up for like a bullet point list popped up on their website for a hot minute. Then it was removed and replaced with a placeholder for a video. Now that video is there. It's Kevin McCarthy talking about priorities. But what I saw, just the wording, the vocabulary was very 1994-like. Very 94-like. You don't say, parents' Bill of Rights. You say defending our children. You don't say inflation. Nobody knows what the hell that means. You say we're in a cost of living crisis and you are feeling the pain from the grocery store to the gas pump and even in the comfort of your own home, which you are struggling to pay for. Man. All right. It's that time. Let's pay the bill, shall we? Listen, and by the way, you're going to see it in the next poll. How many people are concerned with food and groceries? Inflation right now with food and groceries, the cost of rising stapled goods. This rising cost of stapled goods is ridiculous. That's why experts say that shortages are still coming, even in the U.S. Drought, inflation, and even new policies are pushing America's food supply near its breaking point. That's why survival food is more important than ever. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food kits like Laura and I absolutely do and did before this. It's not ordinary food. We're talking good for 25 years super survival food. Handpicked right in a family-owned facility in the US of A. The kits are compact totes. They're sturdy totes. Water-resistant and stack easily. Also, by the way, light pollution can damage this food. And they are absolutely fantastic when it comes to keeping out light. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, dinners, and you can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. Go to 4patriots.com/TPP. The link's in the description to get your 3-month survival kit for only $6.97. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus 10 free gifts, lots of which we've showed you, and free shipping. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale, folks, is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Just go to 4patriots.com/TPP, the People's Pundit, TPP, to build your own stockpile today. All right. And I'm telling you, you think I'm kidding? You'll get all this free stuff, those 10 free gifts. Every single one of them is usable. Love 4 Patriots. They're a great company, and they have great food. It's delicious. I'm a stew guy. The stew's my favorite. I think Alfredo, Laura likes. My son does too. The breakfasts are good. Cocoa, coffee. Laura and I are bitter preppers, and we've tried a lot of this stuff before. MREs don't last. They don't really last that long. And I know that, by their shelf date, they don't. This food is cutting above the rest. It really is. And a lot of companies do really good jobs. I'm just telling you, that what we personally love for Patriots, and that's why we think you should love it too. Get it too. Prepare yourselves. Jack, he sent me something, Laura. I should save a little bit of time to read this. So these like rich people who are buying these bunkers, which has been going on for a while. But I mean, it's an interesting article. And we were talking and like, if there was like an asteroid, they wouldn't even tell us. The elites, they wouldn't even tell us.
We're dead.
They would just go in their bunkers, hope for the best, and let us all just be blindsided. They would. You gotta read. You know what? I do want to save some time to read you this. You're gonna be like terrified. Not terrified, but I mean stunned, like horrified by the callousness of this group of people who just don't seem to care about their own fellow, humankind. It's like no humanity. All right. Public polling project, links up. You guys got the links? Locals, I know you do. And by the way, in my article, we should do the article first because then that'll tee it up. Yes, we should. In my article, though, for people, it was not behind the locals paywall. So for people who are not local supporters, tell me whether or not, and we'll come back to this cross evidence in a second. Tell me whether or not when you go to click on the links to the polls that I hyperlinked. All right. And Laura will share out this link for everybody to follow along. I'll do YouTube here myself. I'll do it across the board, actually, Laura. I don't want to bother you. You're doing what you're doing. But, if you're not a member of locals, you still should be able to read this. Tell me whether or not when you go to click on the links to the crosstabs to the polls that are cited, you get a paywall. All right. I don't know that that's true, but that's what I heard, and I'd like to know. All right. Yeah, I just saw a little comment in locals. I do think that Mastriano was going to win that race. At this point, I absolutely do. Getter, sorry, the link thing is just too long for Getter. But I do think that Doug is going to win that race. It's the beginning of what I started to see with Kerry Lake. And it was like really obvious that the undecideds were going to go to Kerry Lake. And we had her up by like a point when everyone still had her down. Now everyone's got her up by a couple of points, between 1 and 4. I think you're going to start to see that. I think the forecasters should probably come to like grips right now with the fact that Arizona's gubernatorial election may not really be that close. Democrats are in a complete panic. Everyone knows it. You never read those articles in Politico, Laura, about how the Democrat consultant class is panicking because Katie Hobbs, the Democratic candidate. You never hear that. Only against the Republicans, you'll get all these like unnamed GOP strategists who start to trash the GOP nominee. You never get that with Democrats. Meanwhile, everybody knows what I'm saying is true. They think that Hobbs has a lot of problems, is like scandal ridden with how she conducted elections and everything. But worse than that, she's not good with the public. And Kerry Lake, who spent 25 years in media, is a rock star. Whether you agree with Kerry Lake or not, there are two problems Democrats are having. One, it's hard to attack someone that the public knows. Two, she's savvy, man. Savvy. Every time the media tries to attack her, she makes them look like an idiot. And Hobbs won't debate her because she's afraid. Can we be real? She's afraid of debating Kerry Lake. Laura's going in the background. She is chicken. And I trash both Republicans and Democrats who don't want to debate. I don't like it. The voters, you are owed a debate because especially in statewide races, hard for you to travel around and meet every damn voter across the state. But that's what the debate is for, where they see where you stand on the issues and they can see whether or not they take measure of you and see whether or not they like you. You got to debate, Hobbs. We all know you're not going to do as well as Kerry Lake. That's not the point. You're down anyway. You're down. Right, exactly. You're down anyway. And you know it. I know it. Your Democratic strategists know it. The media knows it. You just look like a chump at this point. Right. You have to debate. Voters are owed a debate. And for those who think I'm kidding, I trashed Walker a month ago over this. 2 months ago, I think I started. I don't even remember. Or not trashed him, but criticized. By the way, They spent, what, $20 million against Herschel Walker? He still has a lead. We all know who I'm responding to here, so I'm just going to read it. Overall, though, I only cited him by name, as even though you know he is he who should not be named on our show normally. All right, 5-turd fake. I only did because he is like the New York Times version of all the fake media. They take cues from them. All these so-called forecasters, left-wing forecasters, take cues from him. All right. By the way, getting leaked polling data that is more accurate in the era of new advancing technology is not the same as predicting elections yourself. And that's the backstory there. All right. No, Trump's presence in the midterms is not risky for the GOP. Without Trump, the GOP struggles to turn out voters. How short our collective political memories are. Here we are in September, and many of the same arguments we've heard for the last 3 cycles are resurfacing just in time to influence the narrative before the pivot to the post-Labor Day period. Unsurprisingly, it's coming from the usual political suspects. You guys know who I'm talking about. The Larry Sabatos, the Crystal Balls, the Cook Political Reports, and Dave Washmans. And, of course, the Nate Silvers and 5-turd fakes. Let's address some of those specifically, most notably a few arguments outlined by Nate Silver. And I'm quoting him because these were really his central arguments. Upset Democratic special election wins in Alaska and New York over the past 2 weeks are the latest sign that the political environment might be unusual for a midterm election. Nonsense! Total nonsense. In the Alaska at-large special election, the advantage in Republican primary vote share was twice the margin Trump won the state with in 2020, and it dwarfed the 36.8% total Democratic primary share of the vote. Congressional level. As all these forecasters know, this was the first time the state implemented ranked choice voting. The referendum was pushed by a coalition of Democrats and establishment Republicans desperately maneuvering to insulate incumbent Senator Lisa Murkowski from certain primary defeat at the hands of Trump-endorsed Kelly Tshibaka. It worked, plain and simple. And more than 60% of Alaskan voters will now be represented by someone they otherwise never would have voted for, even if it is only for a few months. And it will only be for a few months if Begich gets out of the race. If Sarah Palin got less of a vote initially in the first round than he did, I would tell Sarah Palin she should get out of the race, just as if it was true if the roles were reversed. It's the Messiah complex that Laura's always talking about on the right. Notice Mary Patolda didn't have to deal with 3-4 candidates. Nope, not even one other. Just her. It might be convenient for a liberal analyst cheering on Democrats to cite Mary Patolda's win as an example of, quote, Republicans losing steam, unquote, or Trump being, quote, risky for the GOP, unquote, but it's also extremely dishonest. If it wasn't ranked choice voting, we'd all be talking about how Republicans romped Democrats in 2-party primary share. And we'd be looking at Congresswoman Sarah Palin right now. As far as New York 19, we'll come back to that in a bit. Quote, back to his argument. The past 4 special elections, 2 in New York, 1 in Alaska, and 1 in Minnesota, all occurred after the seizure, right, on August 8th. And they all showed excellent results for Democrats. Really? And Democrats have actually gained about a point on the generic ballot since then, although it's a small enough difference that it could be statistical noise, unquote. Let's first deal with the polling. Perhaps Democrats are gaining. But says who? The pollsters who routinely oversee Democrat support on the generic ballot, most recently in 2020 and 2018. The Real Clear Politics final average for the House vote was Democrats 6.8 in 2020. That polling fueled a consensus narrative among forecasters expecting Democrats to expand their majority in the U.S. House of Representatives by as many as 15 seats. How many seats did Democrats win in 2020 again, folks? That's right. They lost 13 seats, including those rated leans and likely Democrat by Cook Political Report in 538. The Democratic advantage in the House vote was less than half the polling average. In fact, in only 3 cycles, 1986, 1990, and 2018, did Democrats not underperform their support indicated by the generic ballot. Further, in only one of those cycles, Democrats outperformed, which was in 1990. It was by a lousy 2 points. In 1986, the polling was right on the money. In 2018, I am taking with a grain here because the 1-point lead for Republicans published by Rasmussen Reports averaged down the Democratic edge in the Real Clear Politics final average. Without it, it clearly overstated 13-point leads published by both CNN and the Los Angeles Times. So there's another 10-pointer up there as well, would have almost assuredly resulted in yet another underperformance. What I'm saying is you take Rasmussen out of that average and you're looking at another underperformance of the generic ballot for Democrats in 2018. Here is a graph showing that. For the love of God, folks, there are only a few of us who have not blown these races cycle after cycle, big data poll among them. The most recent national survey we conducted, which we're about to go over, at Big Data Poll, did in fact find a narrowing lead for Republicans, 42.5 to 41.2, so about a 2-point lead. But that was fueled by increased support for was not fueled by increased support for Democrats on the generic ballot. They barely moved. They went from 39 to 41. That's statistically insignificant. But rather decrease support for Republicans as more GOP-leaning voters move to undecided or out of the likely voter screen altogether. None of this even begins to address the issue of summer response bias favoring Democrats before Labor Day. It's real. Everyone knows that it is, and yet we are subjected to these overblown conclusions each and every damn election cycle. And I will tell you this, it's real and it's worse in the last 3 cycles. By the way, Donald Trump led Joe Biden by nearly 4 points in this survey, nearly 5, 44.4 to 39.5 in that very same national survey again. Trump's outperformance of generic Republicans and nominees has been consistent not only in our polling, but in other reliably accurate firms. In Pennsylvania, we just went over, the CD Media Big Data Poll found Trump leading 46.6 to 40, while GOP gubernatorial and senatorial candidates range from 40 flat to 43.2. In Georgia, Trump is outperforming GOP candidates by an even larger margin, both Walker and generic Republicans. And we're not the only ones. Emerson College found the same disparity in both states. They had a pretty solid lead in the generic ballot in Georgia, but Trump was leading Biden by 10. Walker had a 2-point lead. And Emerson found the same. Go and look at it. Walker by 2, Trump by 5. And therein lies the problem with this narrative. While we certainly see red flags for Republicans, we see other variables being the cause of it. Put bluntly, elections in which Trump has not played a significant role, Republican enthusiasm and turnout, thus overall performance electorally, has suffered. While that seizure occurred, a certain strain of conventional wisdom suggested this could help Republicans in the midterms, such as by increasing the enthusiasm of GOP voters. If that's true, it's not showing up in the data. This argument was published a day after Jonathan Swan at Axios said, oh crap, it looks like the raid in Mar-a-Lago, in fact, did help Trump. First, notice how the analysis conveniently omits the historically high turnout in post-raid primaries in Wyoming and Wisconsin. In the former, normal turnout is in the neighborhood of about 100,000 votes, swelled to more than 170,000. In the latter, what was believed to be a close proxy race, pitting Trump against Mike Pence, ended up not at all that close. Trump endorsed Tim Michels, fairly easily defeated the Pence-endorsed former popular lieutenant governor. Of course, we're talking about Rebecca Clayfish. And Republican turnout increased by nearly 20%. It was 53% of the total two-party turnout. That's a reversal from 2018, when in Wisconsin, Democratic primary votes made up 53% of total turnout. Furthermore, I reject the example of Minnesota won outright the special election in 2018. And by the way, it's more than just a special election. You want to take the totality of data, folks, when you're projecting elections. Not cherry pick or apples to apples when it makes sense, apples to orange when it makes sense. Totality. In 2018, Democrats outvoted Republicans in the primary district-wide, but not in 2022. In the special election, Republican Brad Finstad won and increased the GOP vote share to 51.1% compared or juxtaposed to 48.6% in 2020. 50.1 in 2018, 49.6 in 2016, and 45.7 in 2014. It's true Trump won the district by a larger margin in 2020, but that's exactly the point. He was not involved in that race, as was the case in New York 19. Mark Molinaro ran a typical Republican campaign, Turnout suffered because of it and other factors, not because of Trump. And by the way, it wasn't Molinaro's damn fault either. Just bang tight. Who only lost it? Trump only lost this district by about 1.5 points, 49.8 to 48.3. Yet Molinaro still only lost by a point in a district the prior Democratic incumbent, we're talking about Delgado, of course, won by nearly 12 points with more than 350,000 total votes district-wide, 52.5 to 42.9. Only 130,000 voters participated in the special, with the, quote, missing voters being from more working-class precincts. And let me just give you a little bit more than what I wrote here. Molinaro was a victim of the expectations game that McCarthy and others foolishly played. They played up his chances. The polling, the public polling from left-wing groups like Data for Progress was probably intended to inflate Molinaro's chances so that if Pat Ryan eked it out, we could all hear about this narrative. But if you ask Molinaro what his own polling showed, he will tell you he was down by 3 points. The Democratic-leaning analysts reading into New York 19 are beginning to remind me a little bit of the Republican wishful thinkers surrounding Georgia 6 in 2017. While Karen Handel managed to fend off John Ossoff in the special election, Republicans were unwilling to acknowledge the predictive value of the swing in the margin itself. Also worth noting, Republicans were at a structural disadvantage given Democrats were holding two primaries in the absence of a single GOP primary district-wide, which partly explains the closer than expected result in New York 23. Dutchess County, which voted for Biden in 2020, was one area, one town in this district in Dutchess, in which there was a Republican primary, and by the way, Molinaro won it. For the last 3 cycles, we've had to suffer through similar narratives disguised as election analysis. Without Trump, the GOP would have lost the majority in the U.S. Senate in the last midterm in 2018. He single-handedly saved the Republican majority in 2018. Judging by primary and special election participation rates, when he's not holding their hand, it's become crystal clear they are unable to motivate key voting blocks without him. Exactly. You know what, though, folks? Perhaps that's what Nate Silver and other Democrats pretending to be forecasters hope to help Democrats accomplish. You ever think of that? Argue it's smart to keep Trump out so they don't have to deal with an influx of working-class voters who don't typically vote in midterms? They don't want these people to vote. Do you seriously think Nate Silver's looking out for the Republican Party here? Nevertheless, in comparing congressional vote shares to presidential vote shares in Minnesota, ignoring entire key races, and engaging in other statistical contortions, the left-leaning forecast crowd is hoping we don't notice they're falling back on apples to oranges because it's convenient, not because it's predictive. And let's now take a look with that in mind at the results of the latest public polling project. Okay? Okay. Well, we have 7 minutes before the break here. I'm going to leave my share of it up here. All right. I will. Somebody wanted me to talk about New York. I saw. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Throw the nesting questions at me. But somebody had said, please talk about the New York poll. Listen, from what I saw in Pennsylvania, which was a little bit, those interviews had 24 hours to complete. So we did have a little bit longer in Pennsylvania than we did in the public polling project. I will say this. It is very possible. I saw Robert Cahaley's tweet about the working class having a visceral reaction to student loan forgiveness. And I think we are doing some detailed work in Pennsylvania, though that's private, so can't get into it. But let me just put it this way. The last time anybody doubted Robert Cahaley in a blue northeastern state, they ate their words, including the home state pollster Patrick Murray from the Monmouth poll, who had, if you remember, Murphy overwhelmingly beating Citarelli, and Pat almost eked it out. And by the way, because of those polls, the Republican Governors Association, they, like Mitch McConnell is doing right now, like Kevin McCarthy is doing right now, they bought the narrative and they made spending decisions according to that narrative. One little push for Pat in New Jersey, and he'd be the governor of New Jersey right now. And by the way, who was the only one who said that race was going to be that close? That's right, Robert Cahaly at Trafalgar. So dismiss that poll showing Zeldin only down 4 points, which is identical almost to what he found in New Jersey. Dismiss that poll at your own risk. I don't think I had much of a chance to go over the likely voter model on this poll, did I? I don't think so. I really don't. Let's just take a look at a few things here, guys. All right. Obviously, by age, you can see more Republican-leaning voters by age are, going to vote, but are certain to vote, and they're also more excited to vote. More Republican-leaning people, you can see that. But let's also go by party detail, for instance. All right. Just before we move on to the actual, you can see Republicans here are they're more certain to vote. Independents are actually more certain than normal, which is interesting. That would be good for Republicans, frankly. They're also, statistically significantly more likely to be extremely enthusiastic to vote. All right. People who, I could always cross that by region too. That would be another good one to do. You can see that the South and the West, some of those are in the Midwest. The Northeast is the last of the truly liberal bastions regionally. They are the least likely to want to vote. I mean, all of these things are basically showing you ideology is another one. Conservatives are significantly more likely than moderates, slightly more likely than liberals to say that they're going to vote. How about unaffiliated leanings? Meaning, if you say you're an independent or you're something else, we ask you, which would you say? Which party would you say more closely represents your views? Republicans have a slight lead in that right now, equally over Democrats, even though there's still a good amount equally aligned. There are some that share little in common with either. Why is this interesting here? These are people who are less likely to vote, of course. Republicans, actually, when it comes to equally aligned, they're carrying that. We're going to show that, share little in common with either. They're carrying. But you can see here that this is one area where Democrats actually have like a 1 point edge, which is statistically insignificant. So one hope for them is that maybe their leaning voters come out but it's just not historic, based on what, a 1 point lead and a statistically insignificant 1 point lead in a poll. I don't buy it. History is history. All right. Then what else could we show? I mean, race is another one that'll obviously show it, but marital is another good one. If you're married, you're significantly more likely than other Democratic constituencies. Married and widowed are Republican constituencies. Divorced, separated, and single are Democratic constituencies. And you can clearly see there's a significant difference in certainty. Oh, and I should have showed you that too, but take my word for it. There's also a big difference in enthusiasm. All right. Same thing here with certain to vote. Yes, all 18 or over, meaning your parents and your kids are all 18 or over. That is the most Republican constituency. Yes, one or more school-age children under 18 has become a Republican constituency, and they're second most likely to be certain to vote. They're also second most likely to say they're extremely enthusiastic to vote. The two more Democratic-leaning, I wouldn't say this is yet a Democratic group. Yes, one or more under 18, not yet school-age, so babies, but no kids is a Democratic group. Okay. And you can see they're just under one or more under 18, meaning in school. But you can also see they're not that enthusiastic compared to people who do have kids. All right. So let's go back to all. I just wanted a little bit of word on why. There's another wise cracks on Twitter. Oh, the country is not R+1. It's an electorate. The electorate, I was generous here with R+1, right, Laura? Generous. The electorate could be R+1 to R+4. Don't be shocked if the exit polls are like R+4. Don't be shocked. I still think it's more likely that it's going to be ballpark of R+2. All right, but I was being freaking generous here with this, and I still yet get these wisecracks from people. But you respond, and that's what you do. All right, so a word on the economic confidence index. There was a slight uptick. These are the questions that go into the economic confidence index. I will just show you real quick overall. It wasn't great though. Okay. It was not fantastic. So if I go to the table for the sub indicators, I'll just read it out to you what the relative values are real quick. Come on, load up. Let's go. Load up. I mean, you can see the raw right there, but then these are relative values. The current business conditions index rose from 30.3 to 31.2. Not great. Current employment conditions rose less than 2, 42.5 to 44.2. All of these are statistically insignificant. However, the expectations game got better this month, which is why the overall index ticked up. All right, 34.6 was the last time. For expected business conditions, it rose to 41.5. Still rather historically low for this survey. Still recession territory. Expected employment conditions came close to out of recession territory, but it didn't. 42.8 to 48.2. Expected total family income rose the most. All right, which was 31.6 to 41.1. It was not because people felt like they were going to get more money. It was that they saw inflation is growing at a slower rate, although it is still growing. So they're like taking a bit of a breather, although very clearly still under the threshold for growth. So well into recession territory. So what does that mean? It means overall, I got to go back because that's just the sub indicators. Come on, load up, load up, load up so we can move on. It's 102. What does that mean altogether? It means, come on, come on, come on. And by the way, this is all up on Big Data Poll. If you scroll down, I don't know why it takes some time for them, the cache to be purged and reload, but you can see the image on the front that is accurately projecting the trend. So you can see that, in fact, it did tick up, but it's still the third lowest ever for this index, all right? Actually, overall, is it the third lowest? Yes, it is. It's slightly above the second lowest. Last survey was the lowest ever, all right? But the present situation index barely rose, 36.4 to 37.7. The expectations index is what did it, 36.3 to 43.6. Overall, the index rose from 36.3 to 40.7. Unfortunately, you still have current conditions way down in territory of where it was before. So in the end, it's just not good. It's just not. When we look at the impact some of this may have on vote people, okay? Right track, wrong track got better, but it's still negative 30-something points. Biden's approval on inflation is 29%. So just so you know, his disapproval is 65. It's almost 66, really, almost. Immigration, border security is bad. Foreign policy, all bad. Let's get to some of the heart of the issues here. The generic ballot versus the most important issues. Let's do that. We may have to do that in President when we come back, but yeah, we are, because I didn't add most important issues to the other side. Hold on one second. Mouse gets a little screwy here. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Here we go. Oh, come on. That's what I mean by screwy. Doesn't want to do it. There we go. And cost of living detail, which I can't wait to look at. So update the results. Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Save it. And then the crosstab will be back to what we need here. All right, so let's go to before the break. Let's go to the generic ballot before the break. Overall, Republicans have a slight lead. You can see Undecided, it's kicked up a little bit. Someone else's kicked up a little bit. But what had happened is, if you look at last survey to this one, you had some fall out of the likely voter model. They were basically saying, I'm unlikely to vote. There's not a lot of them that we will keep in the likely voter model, even though people who can sometimes say they're unlikely, odds are greater than 0, but less than 50-50, of course, do turn out to vote. We were just casting a big net, and it still dropped some of those out of the screen. And more independents were undecided this month than were last time. All right, so just crossing by most important issues. On the issue of abortion, Democrats have a fairly large lead, 63 to 20. It's all, again, in alphabetical order. On the issue of COVID, Democrats have a lead, but COVID is nothing now, folks. I mean, it's nothing. Cost of living and inflation, which is the number one issue, is 51 to 32, Republican over Democrat. Economy and jobs, which is the number two issue, 45 to 39. That tightens somewhat. Election integrity and reforms rose a little bit. Republicans lead on that issue, 53 to 41. Democrats always wrong on the environment and climate change, which is something Florida Republicans don't cede ground on. We have polled Florida many times, and people will tell us that they actually trust Republicans more to handle the environment than they do Democrats. That is because there's nothing wrong with Republicans being the field and stream green Republican. And in Florida, they have done that. On foreign policy and national security, Republicans have a rather big lead. Last month or last time, the issue of guns, we had the shootings. Democrats had a big lead on that. They do not anymore. It's about a 5-point lead. On healthcare, always a good issue for Democrats, 56 to 27. On the issue of immigration and border security, which is basically tied with abortion as the number 3 issue. Look at the lead. Republicans, listen, 9% said immigration and border security, 9% said abortion. All right? Republicans lead by a larger margin among voters with immigration than Democrats do among voters who pick abortion. So, again, there's some stuff that's being left on the table here. You could easily wipe away this abortion left-wing voter enthusiasm with the margin you're winning other voters, including truly persuadable ones, on these other issues. All right, so there you have it. The rest of them are, other, which Democrats typically lead on these others. When we look at them, what are they? We were kind of reading some of them yesterday, right, Laura, and laughing. Some of them are people who just like, they have to say other so that they can tell you how much they hate Donald Trump. All right. And yes, he always invokes that response from liberals. But, there's other stuff as well. Immigration, border security is the last real big one. Healthcare is slightly behind that. Climate change is usually always up there. It's a younger group that tends to cite that. But on the major big issues, Republicans have a lead. 3 out of the 4 top voting issues, Republicans lead on. All right. And we're going to expand that in more detail when we come back. We're going to take a real quick break with Bad Habit. We're going to show you guys some graphics when we come back. All right, stay tuned. Don't go anywhere for this short 2-minute break or so. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, People's Pundit. More after the break with a lot more polling. A lot more. Gavin Newsom versus Donald Trump. Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. One of them is going to make you laugh hysterically. All right, stay tuned.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on the
lane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind. Cause I know that you know that I know that you own me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. Cause I just wanna be your bad habit, yeah. You're gonna
Oh no, we were muted. Let me just go over that again then. I am asked, we have asked, I saw some of you guys have requested, if I was muted and you couldn't hear that, some of you guys did request, you have a promo code if I wanted to get something else, and stay tuned for that. We're on that. All right. But go check out, what you had seen on the screen right there. That is a actual depiction of everything you get in that kit. 4patriots.com/TPP, which stands for the People's Pundit. All right, but stay tuned, yes, for those promos. I said I'm getting inundated with those requests, and I don't blame you. All right, what I was saying, too, before the mute is I love these polling episodes. All right, this is what makes the Inside the Numbers your bad habit. Admit it. All right, but yeah, it's like this is what I want to do this every episode. I wish we could do this every single episode. I really do. All right, so we were talking about most important issues. Let's take a look too at the cost of living detail. All right. This is where Republicans aren't reacting quick enough. All right. I don't know how else to say that, but Republicans aren't acting quick enough. On food and groceries, Republicans have a 52 to 33 point lead. On gas and fuel, 65 to 22. So I understand why they want to spend their time on gas and fuel. It's just that we're at a Labor Day now and the summer driving season is over. So there's a little bit of a political trap there for them. Gas prices are not coming down to where Donald Trump had them. That is a matter of policy. They will stay triple the price when Donald Trump left office. That's something, yes, you can always say. But the fact is, for those of you who have watched the show for a while now and have been following the Public Polling Project since its inception nationally, because before 2020, it was about states. Now we're doing this nationally. You know that food and groceries was, in fact, the number one concern before gas started screaming through the roof, which, by the way, Mr. Biden, happened long before Vladimir Putin ever invaded Ukraine. Or invaded, whatever you want to call it, liberated or invaded. All right, I don't want to piss anybody off. Depends on what side of the issue you are here. All right, but, the bottom line is that will, because you poked the bear, he took the part of Ukraine with the shale deposits. That's permanent damage now. Until the U.S. government changes energy policy, that is permanent damage now. You're not going to get the gas prices that you saw under Donald Trump because look at the North American rig index, for crying out loud. We don't even have an energy sector at this point. Used to be 600, 800, 1,000 rigs. This much Canada, this much U.S. Poor Texas, poor Alaska. That's why you don't get suckered by ranked choice voting, Florida. Don't do it, North Carolina. Don't do it, Arizona. You do this, and they will decimate your energy industries. You watch. Alaska's about to give you a lesson. 60+% of the people of Alaska are going to be represented by somebody they otherwise never would have voted for. Anyway, food and groceries, which is why I say from the grocery store to the gas pump, and even in what is supposed to be the comfort of your own home. You might notice that housing and shelter is pretty much tied with gas and fuel now. Republicans had a lead with housing and shelter. Now it's 46-26 Democrat. People could say, how the hell could that be? This happened under Joe Biden. It's a matter of messaging. Taxation, Republicans have a huge lead on, but look at the difference. It's less than half who care about food, housing and shelter. Less than half who care about gas and fuel. It's a fifth of those who chose food and groceries. Utilities and electric, another thing. Look, inflation means nothing. Cost of living means different things to different people. So you have to be a bit sophisticated here when you're talking about this issue, and you have to be more encompassing. If you're a younger kid who's trying to rent an apartment while you're going through school, the Democratic message may be more appealing to you. If you're a working class guy or girl and maybe you drive a truck, you're trying to get back and forth to work, you got a haul, or gas actually has to deal with something you do, landscaper, right? Who knows? Excavation, home building. Then obviously you're going to side with Republicans on this issue. But everybody needs food and groceries. Everybody. And everyone is feeling that pain at the grocery store. And we know that from the project, in March it was? Or no, it was before. It was February, or no, it may have even been before that. End of 2021. When did we do the inflation survey? Tell us what stapled goods you're experiencing price increases with. Things like eggs, bread, meat, poultry, shrimp. Huh? Basic necessities. Bare necessities, your basic bare necessity. And yeah, God, we're talking about the bottom of the ladder of Maslow's hierarchy of needs here, folks. For crying out loud. If you can't make that case, then lower it. All right, let's check out Trump and Biden. All right, we can do this with cost of living. Trump is obviously just completely thrashing him on everything, from the top. Two out of three. And then even on most important issues, by the way. You can see this here. Those were only inflation voters. That's why that margin was so big. Trump was at 55. Biden was at 31, in case you didn't see that. All right, so over here, cost of living, inflation, Trump carries it, 54.28. The coronavirus pandemic still goes to Joe Biden. That is because, let me explain to you, that is because those are people who are choosing that as their number one issue. If we would have just asked everybody, then that would not look like that. I'll tell you right now. Abortion too, that goes to Biden. No surprise there. Jobs in the economy goes to Trump. Election think about this, folks. Everything they have said about Donald Trump, the January 6th committee, right? And he's still leading among election integrity and election reform voters combined. Foreign policy, Trump running away with it. Gun rights, even after the shootings, Biden barely has a lead there. Healthcare, again, always a good issue. For a while, Republicans were doing better with the issue of healthcare. But then they pulled a Paul Ryan, lied to the country about having a consensus plan to repeal and replace Obamacare, and they blew the issue of healthcare for probably a generation. Immigration and border security, 80-12, Trump. So, you see how it is. So overall, Trump, like I said, has a lead 44.4 to 39.5 over Biden. Very interesting here. You want to look at by area. All right. What about those voters that we were talking about, folks? Right? Those suburban independents and those suburban moderates. Trump has a 6-point lead in the suburbs. 7, if you take it all into consideration. 7-point lead. by party detail. Let's look at party detail. Trump has a 10-point lead with independents, is even tied with third-party voters now. That once went pretty significantly for Joe Biden in 2020. By education, Trump leads high school or less. He leads with some college associates. He only trails by 8 among 4-year degrees, and he even increased his advanced degree margin from last month, which was like 28%, to 34%, and Joe Biden fell from 60 to 52. All right, so there you have it. By what else here? By age is interesting, but you get the deal. I'm just trying to show you this so when we compare them to the others. 18 to 24, Biden, 42 to 25. 25 to 29, Biden, 44 to 31. 30 to 39 starts to get very even. This is the group I keep telling you to look at. 43 to 39, that's nothing. All right, 40 to 49, 44 to 41 tilts Trump. 50 to 64 tilts Trump. 48, 37, 65 plus has returned to Donald Trump from 2020. 53, 38. That is a big deal. And you can see it in Pennsylvania as well, where we did see tightening among those seniors because of COVID. No mo. No mo, no mo, no mo. We can go through the normal stuff we did, but I'm doing this to show you that because I'm really trying to show you when we compare to these others where their deficits are. So, it's like Trump almost by 5 over Biden. It's Trump 10 over Harris. All right. And let's just go. I'll show it to you right now. Even with leaners with Newsom. I'll show you right now. Are you ready? That's it. Yeah, it's like Trump plus 20. Nobody knows who Gavin Newsom is. And when they do, look at by region. Even in the West. Let's go back and show you where we got these. Now, what does that mean? Trump's going to carry California? Of course not. It tells you that outside of it, they wouldn't even consider voting for Gavin Newsom. This is the regional participation of this survey. Look at the West. And Gavin Newsom can't even pull a decent share of the vote there. He's getting crushed in the South, 53 to 21. The Midwest, 41 to 30. The Northeast, even. 46 to 26. That's what blew this wide open. Because if you look at Biden, where are you, Biden? Biden does well. Or better. Biden does well in the Midwest. Or better. At least he gets to 36% in the South. At least he ties Donald Trump in the West. Not Gavin Newsom. And Harris is why I tell you guys, I did this and I'm publishing it just to show you what a waste of time it is. It's a waste of time. You're going to see these big media and university polls. They're going to pull only high interest voters. They're going to make their vote screen like D+9 to try to get it close. Even if we did D+9, Gavin Newsom would be like 37%. That's it. I mean, it's just way too ridiculous. I'm more willing to pull Michelle Obama at this point. You notice Bernie and Clinton, they were still getting killed by Trump, but at least, people knew who they were, so it wasn't like worthless to poll. Even outside of California, they don't really know. Even in California, they're not dying to have him as their presidential nominee. Did you see the percentage of, let's go by party so you can see how many people pick other. All right. Trump takes 10% of Democrats against Kamala Harris, who takes 5% of Republicans. But 11% of Democrats say they'd vote third party, when single digits, 7.8, say they would vote third party for Republicans. All right. Or Republicans say that. Look at Gavin Newsom. 21% of the Democratic Party would vote for somebody other than Gavin Newsom. A third-party candidate. 12% would vote for Donald Trump. Trump consolidates his base. Gavin Newsom barely gets over half of it. And Trump beats him like a drum, 22 points among independent voters. And by the way, I should have a regrouping variable here, Laura, for independent and something else to cobble together. Remind me to do that so we can have a more traditional independent other kind of thing. I forgot, I guess. Actually, you know what? Let's do it right now. I'll show you how to do it, guys. Let me go back to all. We got 5 minutes before the next segment. Let's do it. Save it. I'm going to show you how it's done. All right, we go to variables. This is how we do it. I'm a little buzzed and it's all because South Central doesn't like nobody does. We do that in this house. I just didn't have it in the crosstab. Did I do it? Oh, I did do it. Okay. But let me just show you what is done, how it's done. You'll see the RV there. It means regrouping variable. All right. I guess I just didn't put it in the crosstab. Oh, I didn't? No, it should just be the variable screen. Oh, you can't see it there. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. Generally considering, generally speaking, we just take that normal, question, and then you can see that I've named this party instead of party detail, which I renamed. It's the other one is party when it comes in the raw data set. I rename it to party detail so you guys can break it out by more than just Democrat, Republican, Independent. All right, so when I do that and I'll put in party there, it searches through the predecessor variables and it finds party detail, which then gives you all of these options, okay? And I simply just, independent, something else, call it independent other, hit done, save it on up, and it saves, okay? Let's go. There we go. So let's go back to crosstab and I'll put it in there. This way you guys can do party detail, like you could do age detail. All right, here, let me. Somebody said, I can hear Mr. Barrett's vaping. Don't tell Google. I'm not supposed to do that. Political identification, it's under. I mean, we try to keep this all pretty easy here, pretty self-explanatory. Come on, work. Nested it. What was the question about nesting, by the way? Because that's just what happened right there. Sometimes it happens like this. It nested again. It's towards the top. All right, I'll check it out. There we go. Sometimes a little bit buggy, So we close it. We save it. And now we can see together.
What is the ancestry of the undecideds?
Ooh. By vote, you mean? So like I'd have to nest it together here. You know what? I'll check out. I'll build a new crosstab and do that in a second. So now you can see, by the way, let's go to Newsom. Where are you, Newsom? There you are. Newsom versus Trump. Okay. Now, independent other, you can see Trump has got a 20-point lead when you combined the other with independent. All right. And this is Gavin's major problem right here. He's losing 12% to Donald Trump of his own party. And Trump is only losing 4% to him. So it's a serious problem. But really, this is the major problem. 21% of Democratic voters would rather vote for a third-party candidate. That's more than twice as many Republicans. And of course, that would shrink over time. It would. But this is why we have, this is why we push back so hard on some of these other pollsters that'll just like make this bench of people that nobody knows. And then they publish these results that show that it's close. It's not. Or not even that it's close, but, because I don't think anybody would publish a poll right now that showed Gavin Newsom leading Donald Trump. I mean, that would just be an invitation to be creamed by the People's Pundit. All right. Here, too, you see Kamala's got a similar problem. And Biden, but she's still consolidating 3/4 of her base. She's losing 10% to Trump. That's what Biden's losing, too, by the way. See? But he's only losing 7%, just as much as Trump, to the third party. Biden's real problem is that Trump is doing just better among his base than Biden is doing among his, and Donald Trump is taking a nice size lead for independents. and more independents were undecided this month. That's the only reason why Trump came down from 47. All right, so let's look at and I'm going to just put this back the way it was. So when someone clicks on the link publicly, it'll show it there. If I leave it there on my end, when you click on the link, it could show you that potentially. So, all right, so make sure I'm doing this right though as I do it. Let's do another crosstab. All right, and let's call it, what did they want with it? Presidential vote or generic ballot?
You know, that's
We could just,
question. YouTube ML. Where are you?
that's a really good question. I mean, get a lot of really good questions, of course, but let's see. What is the ancestry of undecideds by Great Q and L? Q and L, are you talking about for the generic ballot? I mean, I'll put that together right now.
Just ML.
Vote preference by undecided. Vote preference by undecideds, or I would say undecided vote preference nested by ancestry, because there's going to be Hispanic, there's going to be and of course we have to use the weighting variable. There's going to be Hispanic, there's going to be white ancestry, ethnic origin, there's going to be a bunch of stuff. So let's do that. We'll do columns. We'll go to survey demographics. We'll just take white detail, we'll take Hispanic detail, we'll take Asian detail, no race overall. We'll put in the go to survey questions, and we'll grab the generic ballot. All right. We will ixnay the rest. Oh, well, actually, I'll leave them all here so you can see. All right. Danish for whites now. You can see some of this very, very small subgroups. English, you can see, which is breaking for Republicans, 50-34. This is why I thought this was a great question. I'm actually going to go ahead and save this crosstab. All right, because I like this idea a lot. All right, so let's look at this. English is a rather large group. Okay, they are breaking Republican, 50-34. They are significantly undecided, which is why it's in blue here. Okay, Germans, who are also a nice size subgroup, they're breaking for Republicans, which is why Pennsylvania looks the way it does. 57-31 with 11% undecided. The Irish are going Republican, 47-40. They're only 7% undecided, though. Italians, not a small subgroup by any means, 9% undecided, going 51-38 for Republicans. Norwegians have swung back Republicans from the other category is pretty much, nationally is a slightly leaning Democratic category. There's a good number of undecideds there, so that could help Democrats. Theoretically, it could not, honestly. Danish as well, going big for Republicans, such a small subgroup. You really can't read much into that. Scottish, almost completely decided. They're going heavily for Republicans. The Scot-Irish, a little bit bigger of a subgroup, but very small sample sizes. When you look at Mexican, they're considerably, they're going 50-27, 51-27 Democrat. They're significantly, undecided. Cubans, I thought, when you're looking at, obviously Cubans are going to vote Republican, folks. This is a national survey. If it was Florida and we had a larger subgroup of Cubans, especially because we oversample Hispanics in the state of Florida to make sure that each group is represented correctly, you would see this obviously a bigger Republican margin. It's just the way when you're looking at these tiny subgroups, the way it goes. But that's interesting there. So there's a potential for Democrats to maybe win some more votes here, but it's also very likely that no, those Mexicans will break for Republicans. It's almost, I don't want to say given, but the Chinese is another vote-rich group for Democrats, small subgroups. Filipinos too, small subgroups. Indians are actually in this, you're looking at 11 responses. So it's so hard to draw any, to infer anything from such a small group. The Asian group overall, though, is a Democratic group, much more so at this point than Hispanic. All right. But looking by this white vote, which we do have as, some people are like, 71% is a lot for white. No, it's not. The electorate in 2020 presidential election was 71, 72% white. Sometimes midterms are 73, 74% white. I mean, the exit polls themselves, you always like take them with a grain, and then you wait for the census studies to come out, Pew Research's voter file verified typically. It is not, especially when whites are so much more likely to say they're absolutely certain to vote and they have the vote history to back it up. Okay? There did look like there was going to be, if I remember correctly, this was, I'm going to save this. That was a really good question. I'm going to go back to crosstabs. What's that?
I want to see if you wanted to elaborate.
Okay, yeah. If he does, let me know.
Undecided for Mastriano and Oz as well.
Okay, that's a totally different poll, but
By ancestry.
we could definitely do that. Let's do it. I'm trying not to show people things that,
Yeah, please don't show them.
Yeah, they're not. It's good. All right, let's see if it, because I believe Origin's over here. That's what I'm saying. I believe they're actually here. National origin. In Pennsylvania, we just simply do national origin because it is a somewhat very white state, number one. And number two, you can pick other, right? All right, so when it comes to Biden versus Trump with leaners, Trump is just creaming it in Dutchland. Creaming it, right? But they're basically decided. English, large group, and by the way, well, never mind. I'll see if people can look at the screen, and if they figure it out, they figure it out. But it's a major cause for other pollsters' misses in Pennsylvania. English going for Trump this time. That's a flip from 2020. The English ancestry, ethnic origin group, which is really English American they choose, just like they do in the census, that was not a bad group for Democrats in 2020. Joe Biden was slightly eking them out. All right. Actually, in some of the surveys we did, he was winning them, like by a margin like this. And Trump was winning Germans, which is the largest voting group in the state of Pennsylvania, and should be. And if it's not in your poll, you did something wrong. Anyway, there's still 9% of English. The French, another flip, by the way. Germans, 10% undecided. Very good news for Republicans there. Italians, very good news for Republicans there. Non-white, good news for Democrats is the 9.6. The problem is, the size compared to Germans, for instance. It's just, you get more, you're able to squeeze more water out of those sponges than you are the non-white sponge, right? The other groups is good Democratic group, like I said, so that's a nice place where they can pick up some votes. Biden and Democrats. Polish, big deal, very working class group, all right, and going for Republicans and Donald Trump pretty considerably. There's 19.2% undecided, and it's not that small of a sample. Right, Scott Irish and Scottish are very small, but you can see that. All right. And by the way, because we weight down, even though you may see 9, it doesn't mean we only spoke to 9 Scott Irish. This is a sample of 927. We actually spoke to over about 1,100 and something people. Some didn't make the voter voter model. Others are weighted down because they were overrepresented. So just because you may see that, it doesn't necessarily mean that is based on 9 responses, which is why sometimes you'll see you'll see a number that doesn't match the percentage break, like a whole number that doesn't match the percentage. That would be why. Because it's the weighting. It's the when they're raked, they're moved into alignment, and it's just reflecting what that raw number would be, but the overall percentage is different. I don't know if that makes much sense. That may be like a tutorial video or something, but I'm just trying to explain it right now. Again, in the governor's race, there is almost completely decided Dutch, and Doug Mastriano is winning that group significantly. This is good for Doug with the 9.1% of English who are undecided, even though they can lean Democratic, because he's already trailing them by 1 and Trump is carrying them so convincingly. All right. And if you look on the generic ballot, English is also going for the Republicans on the generic. Doug's carrying the French, but basically decided. Let's look at the bigger group, shall we? 7.2% of Germans that are undecided, and Doug is carrying that group by about 14 points, all right? 15, actually. Italians, Shapiro is winning, which was a little bit surprising to me since they were voting Republican on just about everything else. Doug, Bucks, and those precincts in Philadelphia, Doug, all right? Those precincts and Bucks County, buddy, all right? Oh my God, Rich just gave advice to, you know. Let me just say it this way: if Doug Mastriano happened to go to Bucks and those 2 precincts in Philadelphia, it would be a good move. How about that? Non-white, 13.4% undecided, but again, a smaller group. The other category is good news for Shapiro. 20% are undecided. He's winning them handily. Polish, 10% are undecided, and Mastriano's winning them handily. And then the others are, like I said, rather small. But the 2 biggest groups have a significant number of undecideds left. They are more than enough to not even to counter, or to completely negate and to wash out the other groups that are undecided as well. Same thing with Oz, by the way. We did see that. Oz is, he could do much better with the English vote. He's trailing right now. It only makes sense to me if you look at the fact that 16% are undecided, okay? In Germans, again, 8% undecided, biggest voting group out there. They're going for Oz. Irish are not going for Oz, which he's, that's different than Trump and even part of Mastriano, and the Italians as well. So they have, him and Mastriano have somewhat similar issues with those groups. So they really need to hit, because they're doing so well with Dutch, they need to really hit, York, Lancaster, make sure these places vote, and then, hit those Italian precincts in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, hit those Italian quarters in Bucks, especially northern Bucks, where they're more rural, less urban. And, there is enough to offset that. I think that Fetterman, if you look at let me look by, just to show people what I meant before. I know that there are a lot of other people in the race, but where are you? Like, for instance, African Americans are typically more conservative here. Fetterman's only winning 53% of the African American vote. Look at how many are undecided. That's a serious problem for John Fetterman. It is. I don't care what you think about how much the Oz campaign, or how long they took to get their stuff in gear, which I think is safe to say they're doing better now. It won't matter if those precincts in Philadelphia do not come out hard for Fetterman. Now, what is good is that he has so much union support in Philadelphia, he's probably going to peel some of those votes away. There would be, I know it sounds crazy, but there would be some Fetterman Trump votes. Not many, but look, in a race like this, every vote counts. Every vote counts. But now you see, it's another really good question. And now you see why I'm so bullish on Doug Mastriano's chances at this point. I really am. I just don't think, if he gets those people out, I just don't think that Shapiro can hold back that tide. I just don't. Min, I just saw that question too. We do congressional district polls. We do them all the time for clients. But how could we pay for that work? Well, I guess it would depend on what district it is. And then, we could see if it's viable, because not all are. Some are just too small. And then the second thing is, we haven't done that with the public polling project because it's hard enough to try to pay for individual states. And we need to make sure we have that generic ballot throughout the whole time. Yeah, unless somebody would donate a whole amount. I wouldn't reject that if somebody had that and wanted to do it. I just don't want to put it out there because I would be worried that we would be picking all of these districts and then they wouldn't get funded. Just like that's why I haven't done the states yet, because it's like we started with the generic ballot, and I don't know, maybe we should stay with the generic ballot. What makes him think that they wouldn't S-word Pennsylvania from Mastriano and or Oz the way they S-worded it? Yeah, I mean, Manny, there are certain margins outside that, and I think at this point, look at Virginia. They couldn't do it for with Youngkin. Pennsylvania is clearly a mess. It is. It is clearly a mess. I just think that when you're like Dr. Oz, for instance, if Oz pulls it together, okay, he is mirroring strength in areas that Donald Trump has strength in. And if he was to pull it together, like look at how well he's doing in Allegheny County and Philadelphia. I just don't know if there's enough out there to do that. I understand your concern. Of course, it's Pennsylvania, and they are look, you don't have to take my word for it. I don't want to get too much into it because of platforms we're on, or at least one of them. But, you can go look at the justice.gov website and go look through indictments, from, I don't know, say September, October of 2020. And you'll see that there's problems, major problems. I don't have any stats on the governor's race in Minnesota, guys. I'm sorry about that. I don't. I will say, though, Survey USA can be rather erratic. I'm going to show you the trend while we're doing this, by the way, in the Registered Voter Confidence Index while I'm just like answering your questions. But I understand there was a pretty big margin for the Democrat. I don't want to just make the show about trashing pollsters, but I think they clearly, it's a Republican year. And I just don't see. Minnesota's a long haul, but it is winnable for a Republican at the gubernatorial level in a Republican year. I just don't see how some of these other places with large numbers of working class people aren't going to swing the way we've seen other swings. And it, of course, is absolutely possible that those working class voters simply don't vote. So it'll look more like 18 and 20. It's possible, I suppose. But I haven't polled it, and without me polling it myself, I don't like to criticize people just because. But yeah, they're erratic. I remember polling, the second question on the ballot in California. The first one was recall, yes or no. And then for a while, it was close. And then Republicans blew it. And Gavin Newsom knew he was in trouble, so he stepped it up and spent a lot of money. He got people out he needed to get out. But the second question was who you're going to choose. And if you guys remember that, nobody was close to Larry Elder. The Republican establishment wanted Kevin Faulconer or something his name was. And that particular pollster had Larry at like 40 and Faulconer at like 25. We had Faulconer at like 3.5%. And I was like, what? In the end, we were right. So I don't know. I didn't see the video of Andrew Clavin. I didn't. If you give me a link to it though. Where is that from? Locals or John? Your locals or your locals, right, John? Yeah, your locals. If you got it, John, pop it in the chat in locals, and I'll take a look at it and we'll see, discuss it. But no, I have not seen it. Anyway, here's the voter confidence index, economic confidence index. You'll see that the present situation was still abysmal. There was just some slight hope in rebounding. The present situation index overall, kept it down. I believe this is the third lowest present expectations index reading. Expectations, as you can see here, is typically higher. When this happened in May, this is when I knew and told you we're in a recession. This is designed, if it goes below 50, it's supposed to show retraction, not growth, right? Negative growth. And then if they converge, it means that it's time for a recession. You could see that it went negative for almost 2 quarters, just about, and then converged. It was amazing. Seriously. Pat yourselves on the back for supporting this project because it worked. It accurately predicted when a recession was coming. Amen. Can I get an amen? It's pretty impressive. Come on, I was taking a I don't know how else to tell you. I was looking at other consumer confidence conference boards, consumer confidence, the survey of consumers, and I was like, what do I think they're doing right? What do I think they're doing wrong? Let's look back over their historical results. What indicated there was a recession? What didn't? It worked. It worked. Get an amen. Amen. Thank you. Got some amens in there. All right. I'm still waiting for John to see where that link is, Laura, but so far haven't seen it. But talking about the undecideds by ethnicity in Pennsylvania, that showed, and that was a great idea. That absolutely showed you why Oz and Mastriano both, even though Oz is a longer way to go, Oz and Mastriano have room to grow, where I think Fetterman and Shapiro are really rather close to their ceilings already. Okay, this also will. First, let's look at the Trump v. Biden. You can see by education with leaners. This is Pennsylvania. You have the some college and associates, which being along with high school and less, the larger groups, all right, that are undecided. So Biden would pull up, but he would not be able to overtake. All right, and you can see there which groups are clearly more intended to voting Republican or leaning to, more inclined to, whatever you want to call it. We even see that more too on the generic ballot. Why? Because the generic ballot is 2022. People will be more undecided in a race that's further out, right? But you can see how it's still working out here. The high school or less is still the most undecided. It also happens to be a huge group in the electorate. Some college associates, another huge group in the electorate, the biggest single, being the second most likely to be undecided. And then the 4-year degrees and the advanced degrees basically being almost completely decided. And they represent about combined 40% of the vote in Pennsylvania. So, it's a real problem if you're maxed out your vote pretty much already. And then the other two, which are bigger than you, have more room to grow. But the question is whether or not they will get those voters to the polls. All right. Bear with me. Let's look at now Shapiro versus Mastriano. Okay. The high school or less, again, being most undecided. And you can see here, Doug is killing Josh among high school and less. Some college, 10%, second most undecided. Again, the trend is clear across all of the questions, with this demographic. It shows very clearly how these, number one, who has got more room to grow because who is more undecided. And then number two, if you had to push them like we did in the generic, which way would they go? They went Republican. It continued the trend. The 4 years in the advance went to the Democrat. It continued the trend. The problem for Shapiro, and to a lesser extent Fetterman, but still for Fetterman, is that those groups are voting Republican everywhere else. And their voters are maxed out. All right? And Shapiro's got some vote he can make up, of course, with the 4-year college. But what if Doug did better than expected with 4-year degrees? He's going to get killed with advanced degrees. That's going to happen. That trend is going to continue for the foreseeable future. That's what Democrats wanted with the everyone should go to college ploy of the early 2000s and on. Or even that started in the 90s, right, Laura? Go to college. Get rid of vocational school. Go to college, get a liberal arts degree. Make sure you can't get a job to pay for it, and then we're going to forgive your student loans anyway. But you can see it here. Doug's got a lot of votes left in some college associate's degree. If you compare him to Trump, he's got a lot of votes left in the high school or less. By the way, you want to see something nested? White working class versus Black and Hispanic working class. Very interesting. And in fact, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to have time to do it by the end of this show, but I'll do it, probably write an article about it, and then we'll talk about it on Friday, among with other things. But then now let's take a look at Fetterman and Oz. Look at how much, look, just from what we know with the some college associates, Oz is getting the lion's share of the some associate undecided vote. He is. He's going to get the lion's share of the high school or less. He is. Someone like a Dr. Oz, it wouldn't surprise me if he actually outperforms Mastriano among four-year degrees, especially considering how well he's doing in some of the Philadelphia area and in the Allegheny area. All right? So you see where I'm going with this. Eric Gerhardt is, and I don't know why this wasn't in, I guess I must have done this graphic before I put them in order, but Eric Chase Gerhardt, a libertarian, at this current moment is taking about 2.4% of the high school less and 3.4% of the some college associate. But Ronald Johnson is taking some of their four-year degrees, the Democrats' four-year degrees. So, you know, the third party is hurting Republicans, as you can see. I made that point before. It's at least hurting Fetterman and Shapiro. Mastriano and Oz more than it's hurting Fetterman and Shapiro. But still, there just seems to be that there are more undecided votes on the table for both Dr. Oz and John Fetterman. And considering the sampling error is 3 points, it is a very close race now. By the way, the first time we looked at this, Fetterman was at like 47. So I can tell you he's falling. And Oz was like, what, 38 or something? 38. So he like ticked up a little bit. Fetterman ticked down 3. He ticked up 2. So the race is heading in Oz's direction. It's just that there are a lot of these third-party candidates. And Oz is really going to have to make that closing case. He's got to. And he's got to close the gender gap. There is a huge gender gap in Pennsylvania in our polling right now. Huge. The good news for Republicans, again, on that is that the female undecided vote is not college educated. The males are less undecided, and they are more a little bit educated than they are overall, but it's still a better looking group for Republicans than it is for Democrats. All right, so I hope that makes sense. All right. Let's see. Kind of did blow past that last one. Let me do one more here, and then we'll take a few more questions, and that'll be it for today. But before we go to a mini Q&A, which we should probably try to make room for every episode, there are polls, at least, right? Laura's going, yes, she likes Q&A, right? But before we do, food shortages. Be ready for them. They could be coming even in the U.S. Experts wrote as recently as last month. Drought, inflation, and even new policies are pushing America's food supply near its breaking point. That's why survival food is more important than ever. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots Survival Food Kit like Laura and I. It's not ordinary food. We're talking about good for 25 years superfood. Hand-packed right in a family-owned facility in the USA. The kits are compact, sturdy, water-resistant, and stack very easily. They have, even though it's filled with that picture is legit, right, Laura? They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, dinners. You can make these meals in less than 20 minutes, folks. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. Go to 4patriots.com/TPP, standing for the People's Pundit, 4patriots.com/TPP to get your 3-month survival kit today. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus 10 free gifts and free shipping. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Again, go to 4patriots.com/TPP, TPP for the People's Pundit, 4patriots.com/TPP to build your own stockpile like Laura and I today. All right, let's hit up the questions. All right. Bill Barr. That's what you get for hiring the guy that George W. asked you to hire when he uses the death of his daddy to get an audience with you. I'm sorry, I hate to say it. The good news for Trump supporters is I can tell you that I know that Donald Trump has learned a lot of lessons. All right. We didn't go over Biden's overall approval yet. I can tell you, though, that let me get you the trend on it. Let me show you the trend. I don't know why I continue to forget to put Biden's approval trend. I made a new graphic for it. It doesn't show as extreme of the swings. All right. But what I added positive negatives. So you could see when, it turned positive, turned negative, and by how much. All right. So there's this idea Joe Biden rebounded. In the RCP average, he did slightly. He's up to 42%. That's because of, you have Rasmussen that's now rebounded somewhat, or quite a bit, actually. And then some others that have. Meanwhile, it's funny, like Reuters hasn't at all, 38%. But overall, we still have him, 16 points negative, which is for people like, oh, he's rebounding. It's getting better for Democrats. Guys, Trump was higher than Biden when they lost the House. Barack Obama was at 47%. Joe Biden is not getting to 47% before November unless a God-given miracle happens. I'm just not seeing the overall trend in our polling clearly shows that he ticked up somewhat, but he's been kind of within this sampling era since last November. You know what I mean? Like, it hasn't been since September of 2021 that he was in the mid-40s in our polling. He hasn't been positive since June of 2021. And it's still a pretty big negative. So the sampling error of the poll is 2.1%. Disapproval came down slightly within that. But in truth, approval only barely ticked. And actually, I forgot to add that last survey. But whatever. That's why there's a big gap here. But in truth, approval only increased slightly. But just to show you too, which one's more positive, which one's more negative. I have to go back to the other data set. Let me do that now. I got time to do it. Not really, but I'm gonna. Hurry up and update. People are waiting. Hurry up. While I'm waiting for it to do it, I'll just pop this one on. All right. Let's go. All right, update complete. When the data sets get so big, folks, that's just the way they are. All right, let's go to the public polling project 2022. The pre-Labor Day. Here we go. See, it's doing that show details bug again, Laura. I don't know. The desktop is getting old. 2 years is apparently old. I'm serious. It's unbelievable. It really is. It's 2 years, a little over 2 years. Bought it just before the building was done. That's the way the world is now. 42% strongly disapprove, 15.8% strongly approve, another 14.4% somewhat disapprove, and 24.2% somewhat approve. What happened here, he got a little higher on strongly, not really. It was the somewhat approve category that improved. The strongly disapprove has not fallen below 42%. God, let me go look again. Since Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. So it's been bad for him, about 4 in 10 strongly disapprove since that time. All right. And I hope that makes some sense to you. But yeah, it's not good at all. All right. With that in mind, again, don't forget, Friday, noon Eastern Standard Time. Locals, we're going to be doing a little local streamer probably tomorrow, which will be great. Yeah, you got the t-shirt? Yeah. Nice. I like your idea, Joel, for another t-shirt. I like your idea. There, and David, just to answer your question last, it could have been part response bias. It could have been. This is why, too, especially during midterm cycles, I want to try to get away from more online targeting and shift back more to peer-to-peer. And you may notice that's why the Public Polling Project, I told you guys with 10DLC, they passed that cost along to me. They waited as possibly long as they could, but now they did. So because I do think we should do that, it's the right move. You'll notice the Public Polling Project is a little bit more, but I just wouldn't be able to do it any other way. It's this month, Laura's over there giving me the eyeball because she knows this month I ate it. I just ate it, but because it was already up there. The form was already up there. But you believe me, you can find yourself blowing thousands upon thousands of dollars real quick on this stuff. There it is. Okay, so with that in mind, Friday, noon Eastern Standard Time, locals, live stream, looking like tomorrow. All right, and keep an eye out more for those locals articles. I'm going to be doing a lot more of those lately. And some of them will be behind the paywall, some of them won't. All right. So I figured, the election's coming along. It's more stuff for more people. And the more information that gets out there, honestly, the better. That's the way Laura and I have always felt. All right. So, yep, she's got it up. Oh, I didn't bring it. Oh, don't miss the book club. Sunday, 3 p.m. It's all right. Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Jack Snyder, Myths of Empire. We are rocking and rolling. We're going to close out this last chapter on, not the last chapter. I mean, this chapter we're on it now currently. We will have banged out Sunday. We did the first part of it on last Sunday, and now we'll do it. All of the archives are there, by the way, folks. If you miss a book club and you need to go and check it out, all of the Zoom meeting, because they're done through Zoom, all of those recordings are up in a playlist on locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, which of course is the best place to follow me. But as I take us out here, you can find me on Truth and Getter at People's Pundit, on Twitter at People's_Pundit. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. Rumble, just keep giving those rumbles, those little pluses. We love them. And everyone, thanks for the Rumble rants that you do, etc. Chats, rants, you know it. We love you for it. All right, but again, the best place is right there. Join the damn revolution at peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, I'm out. I'll see you locals. See you tomorrow. I'll see you a little bit. And I'll see the rest of you on Friday. What? Deuces. Lord.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night. Just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away.